What's good, y'all? And welcome to another preseason preview video. In today's video, we're going to be going over the Atlanta Hawks. In case this is your first preseason preview video of mine that you're seeing, basically what I do is go over the offseason and kind of give a little recap there, and then look into the future and try to see what we can expect in this upcoming season. This isn't the first team I've covered, and it definitely will not be the last. I'm going to be covering all 30 NBA teams, so you don't want to miss out. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. But let's just jump right into it. The reason you guys are all here and is to talk about the Atlanta Hawks. Last season was a little bit interesting because they ended off the season at the 8th seed, going 40-42. But they ended up losing both play-in games to completely miss the playoffs as a whole. They lost to the Orlando Magic in the first one and then to the Miami Heat in the second one. And that's obviously a very disappointing way to finish the season, especially when the Atlanta Hawks have been kind of hovering in this play-in area for the last few seasons now. Usually they sneak into that playoffs, but you know they really have been kind of capped out at that the last few years. This year, though, I think things could change. They've had a very productive offseason, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself because we're going to talk about it in this video, but something tells me this will be the year they finally break away from that play-in tournament. But let's get into their actual offseason, and I want to start by talking about the guys that they lost. First off is Clint Capella. I know he's been kind of the staple around here in Atlanta for the last few seasons, been holding down that center position. He was a free agent this year, and he signed a new contract with the Houston Rockets. He is going back to Houston. Shout out to Clint Capella. Obviously, it's been rumored for the last few years that like Onyeka Okongwu would eventually take that starting spot, and he started a few games this season as well. Especially more towards that second half of the season. And I do think that he is a starting caliber center. I do think that there's some other moves that the Hawks made that makes Clint Capella a little bit more expendable, which we'll get to in a second. All around, though, I do like Clint Capella. I think he's a great rebounder, great pick and roll guy with Trae Young as a lob threat. Just one of those low maintenance centers. I'm sure Atlanta Hawks fans, you guys liked him when he was here because he does his job and doesn't complain. That's all you really want from your center, and I'm sure he's going to do more of that in Houston. The other guy that they also lost out on is Garrison Matthews. He is currently still sitting in free agency at the time of recording this video, but he played about 50 games for the Hawks last year. Last few seasons, he's been, kind of towards the back end of that Hawks rotation. Brings a lot of three-point shooting, and again, with the guys that they brought in, I don't think the Atlanta Hawks will be missing him too much. And that's a perfect segue to talk about the guys the Hawks added this offseason, because I think they added a lot of high-quality players. Starting off with the biggest name, that is, of course, Kristaps Porzingis. They went out and traded for Kristaps. They traded away Georges Niang and a 2031 second-round pick to the Boston Celtics, and then they also traded away Terrence Mann to the Brooklyn Nets in order to make the money match up, and they brought in Kristaps Porzingis. I will say, I really do like this move because at the absolute worst, Kristaps is an expiring contract, and they can just kind of clear off some money off their books and move on from there. But at the best, they're getting a 3-and-D center that could stretch the floor for Trae Young, the first time he will ever be alongside a stretch five, which I think could add a really big dynamic to his pick and roll that's already so lethal. Kristaps will be able to be that lob threat for Trae Young, or also, like I mentioned, pop out to the three and just give him a wide open paint. I also like the rim protection that Kristaps Porzingis brings. But the one thing, though, like I said, that's at the max, at the best this trade could be. I'm a little hesitant, though, because last time we saw Kristaps Porzingis was in the playoffs, and he looked absolutely atrocious. I'm a Knicks fan, as most of you guys do know, so I saw it firsthand against my Knicks when he was with Boston last year in the playoffs. He was a net negative. He wasn't able to really move out there. He didn't look like he was conditioned enough. I know they've been saying he's been dealing with some type of mystery illness. I'm hoping that gets cleared up, and throughout this whole offseason of rest and everything, he could be back and better. But again, last time we saw Porzingis, it wasn't a pretty sight. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, though, and say that he's going to be better than what he was in last year's playoffs. Again, it's a little bit weird when you're talking about a mystery illness that doctors don't know about, and it hasn't even, I don't know the full details. I don't think anyone knows the full details of this illness. Regardless, though, hopefully he's healed up, healthy, and ready to go, because a healthy Kristaps next to Trae Young and the rest of these guys, I think, could be fantastic. The offseason doesn't stop there, though, for the Hawks. They also were very active in free agency. They went out and signed Nickeil Alexander-Walker to a 4-year, $62 million contract. That's about $15.5 million per year for Nickeil. And I really do like this trade, too, because in my eyes, essentially, it's another version of Dyson Daniels. And last year, we saw Dyson Daniels. He was the perfect match alongside a guy like Trae Young to add that defense, that size, the length. He can handle the ball a little bit to take some of that pressure off of Trae Young. And I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker does a lot of those things as well. I think he is a little bit more reliable as a three-point shooter, even though, he isn't the greatest three-point shooter. I think he can knock it down on those catch-and-shoot kickouts from Trae Young. And I think that he's going to be perfect off their bench, just adding more defense and adding more ball handling, which are two things that they definitely needed. They also signed Luke Kennard to a 1-year, $11 million contract. He is going to add a lot of the three-point shooting that they need. I mentioned Garrison Matthews kind of brought some of that, but in my eyes, they haven't had a high, like top-tier level shooter since they traded away Kevin Huerter a few years ago. And I think Luke Kennard is going to work exactly how we saw Kevin Huerter work, just being that movement shooter, coming off screens. Of course, the catch and shoot and relocations from Trae Young having so much of the defense focused on him. We all know he's one of the best passers in the league. He'll be able to kick him out and again just kind of stretch that floor, make it a little bit easier on offense for everyone. And last but not least, they also added a player from the draft with the 23rd overall pick. They drafted Asa Newell, and I really like this pick for them because I feel like it's kind of a high upside. I've mentioned before I'm not much of a college basketball guy, but once they get drafted, that's when I kind of do a deep dive. And Asa Newell I really like because he has great length and great athleticism, and I feel like those are two things that you definitely want as a wing next to Trae Young. He's incredible at finishing at the rim, whether that's a lob or a putback off offensive rebounds or just cutting to the basket. His athleticism makes him really great at finishing those kind of plays. And in college last year, he only shot 29% from three, but when you look at his jumper, it looks like there's something there. I know three-point shooting is really important in today's NBA. I think he would be able to develop a three-point shot. Don't expect it right away, but give it some time, and I think he could be a all-around, complete, versatile wing. And now that we recap the offseason, let's take a look at a potential rotation we could be seeing this year. Starting lineup, we have Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Zachary Ricochet, Jalen Johnson, and Kristaps Porzingis. And then off the bench, we have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Luke Kennard, Vit Krejci, Asa Newell, and Onyeka Okongwu. I feel like the Atlanta Hawks have a very clear and direct plan when it comes to building a roster around Trae Young. Really, it started last year, I think, but this year, with the roster taking more form, I feel like it's even clearer. And that is, they want to surround Trae Young with guys that have at least one of the three following qualities. That is athleticism, defending, and shooting. If you don't have one of these three things, you will not be on this Atlanta Hawks roster. And looking at this rotation, I feel like that is very clear. I just want to go down each of those categories and just kind of show you what I mean. Some of these players definitely fit in more than one of these categories, but like I said, at least all of them kind of fit into one. Starting off with the athlete category, obviously every NBA player is going to be athletic, but it seems like the Atlanta Hawks really stress that, especially in their bigs and their wings, because guys like Onyeka Okongwu, Jalen Johnson, Zachary Ricochet, Asa Newell, all of these guys are really high-quality athletes. And I think this is a big plus because Trae Young, being such a great passer, he's real quick to kick it up and get the ball out in transition, or those lob threats, backdoor cuts, all of it. Trae Young really is great at surveying the court, and when you're open, he will dot it to you. And having that athleticism just makes it even easier to capitalize and finish that play. Then you move on to defending. This is even broader because you have guys like Dyson Daniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Asa Newell, I think, has upside as a defender, but, he's just a rookie, so I don't want to put too much pressure on him yet. Zachary Ricochet showed a lot of promise in his rookie season being a defender. Jalen Johnson defends his ass off. Onyeka Okongwu, I may have mentioned him already. I don't know if I did or not, but he defends. Kristaps Porzingis is a great shot blocker. We all know it's no secret that Trae Young himself is a smaller guard and not a great defender at all, even though he has made strides. He's better than what he once was. he still isn't a good defender, so surrounding him with other great defenders definitely mitigates that, how much it affects you. You know, obviously when it comes to playoff time and stuff, everyone is just going to find the easiest matchup, put you in a pick and roll, make you work, all of that. But having this infrastructure around him at pretty much all positions, I definitely think helps him a lot. And again, is clear that that's the direction they want to go. And then the last category I mentioned was shooting. That's where you see guys like Luke Kennard included, Vic Krejci, Zachary Richichet, I think is going to be a better three-point shooter this year. I think he looked very fluid with that. I mentioned Kristaps Porzingis and the fact that he is going to be the first stretch five that Trae Young plays alongside. Trae Young himself is a shooter. You can include him in that. You know, so like I said, they really want those three qualities. And if you ask me, these three qualities are probably some of the most important in the NBA. And again, a lot of this rests on if Kristaps Porzingis is going to be his healthy self that we're used to, that, you know, fringe all-star level player. Will he be playing like that and up to that level? Hopefully. We all know what Trae Young brings us year in and year out, one of the best offensive players in the league. And then also Jalen Johnson. I know he's been dealing with injuries the last few seasons, but he's also been getting better and better every single year that he's on the court. So hopefully we get a healthy season from him as that, you know, playmaking kind of do-it-all wing where he's super athletic and finishes, defends, rebounds. I love guys that impact the game in multiple ways, and Jalen Johnson impacts it in almost every way. And lastly, before we move on, I did want to give one shout out to a notable reserve on the Atlanta Hawks, and that is Mo Gay. Last year was his first real year of playing like actual playing time. The year before that, his rookie season, he only played like 6 games or something like that. Last year, he had a little bit more opportunity, and whenever I watched him on the court, I really liked what I saw. I don't know if he will make the rotation. Obviously, as you guys saw, I put Asa Newell as that backup power forward instead of a guy like Mo Gay. But I think he brings a lot of productive stuff to a team, and I wouldn't be surprised if he is in the rotation. I just really like his size, his athleticism. He's very versatile defensively. You know, he's fluid with his movement, even though he is so big at, I believe, like 6'11". You know, I think he brings a lot of good stuff to the court. Last year, I really enjoyed watching him. He just barely didn't make my rotation here, but I do think he still deserves a shout out, so shout out to Mo Gay. And now it's time to talk about the ceiling, floor, and my expectation for the Atlanta Hawks. Of course, as always, we're going to start off with the ceiling, and this might be a little bit higher than a lot of the people that I've seen, but the ceiling for the Atlanta Hawks, I think they could be as good as the 2 seed. I think that it's going to be pretty hard to be better than both the Cavs and the New York Knicks. I could see a world where they're better than one of those two, but they're both clearly the top 2 teams in the East in my eyes. So I can't really see a world where Atlanta's the best team out East. But I think that if things break a certain way, they could definitely be up there at that 2 seed. And then when you look at playoffs, obviously if they're having such a successful regular season, you would think that success travels into the playoffs. And in my eyes, they do. At their ceiling, I could see them being as far as the Eastern Conference Finals team. I don't know if they'll make a finals appearance and all of that, but I could definitely see them making a very deep playoff run. Then when you look at their floor, I can see them being as low as the 8th seed. Obviously, this would be more in a situation where Porzingis doesn't look like himself, or maybe Jalen Johnson or someone else goes down with an injury. Obviously, you can't really predict that too much, but at their floor, we've seen, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is kind of where they've hovered around in that play-in area, and at their floor, I could see them kind of just repeating that. Now, I know this last season, they were the 8th seed, and they lost both play-in games. At their floor, I'm going to throw that out the way, because losing 2 play-in games, I feel like is really, really hard to do. Even though they just did that, I think at their floor, they will make the playoffs and be a first-round exit. And then when you look at my expectations for them, I was really, really close to putting them at the 3 seed. I ended up settling on saying my expectations are the 4th seed for them. Like I mentioned, though, I do think that they are going to be one of the stronger teams out East. And then when you look at the playoffs, I do think, like I mentioned, with the Cavs and the Knicks being kind of in a tier in their own, I couldn't expect them to make the conference finals. There's definitely a world where I see it happening, but my expectations are that they're going to be a very tough second-round exit. What about you guys, though? Let me know in the comments below where you think the Atlanta Hawks will finish off this season. Let me know what seed and also how far in the playoffs you could see them going. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch y'all.